Hi, class. Hope you're having a good week. We're starting today to talk about modern American literature, and we're going to begin this selection of readings with Ernest Hemingway. And you'll see on our middle course site that you have 4 short stories by Hemingway that I want you to read. 3 are links that are on our Moodle site, and 1 is located in your textbook. And as you're reading those stories, I want you to consider some of the characteristics that are associated with Hemingway and some of the themes that are recurrent in his writing. So let's just begin with a little bit about him, putting him into reference and as to where we've been so far and where we're going. I wanted you to know that he really admired Stephen Crane and Crane's ability to write about war. Hemingway wanted to be involved in World War I and wanted to be involved in World War II, but for various reasons was only able to drive an ambulance in World War I because of an eye injury, and then was a war correspondent in World War II. But it still had somewhat of an impact on his life, his writing style, and the kind of character with which we associate him today. He was considered a stoic person, meaning that he didn't show a lot of emotion in his writing. However, he expected his readers to take what he gave them and to delve into it. So it is said that he writes on the theory of the iceberg, where 7/8 of what he intends for people to figure out about his writing is below the surface. So you'll think about all of the dialogue that you will see in, for instance, Hills Like White Elephants, which is one of the short stories you're going to read this week. There's a whole lot going on in the conversation between the 2 characters that's not stated directly. So you have to use your ability to infer and in order to understand the implications of that story. Another term that you want to be considering when you read that story and the others in our weekly selection this week is the term symbol, because if you remember, a symbol stands for something itself and something larger, and there is the symbolism that's going on in Hills Like White Elephants is quite important to the reader's understanding of the conversation. In addition, although he liked to write in the minimalist style, he also was a lover of adjectives and creating imagery. And also he wasn't necessarily always writing very short sentences. He had a varying style where he did tend to write some unending periodic sentences. Many authors who followed him emulated his style, such as Kurt Vonnegut. And you'll see that, or there's another quote that I included on your sheet, that his background had an impact on what he wrote about, in that he grew up in Illinois, where he said that there were lots of wide lawns and lots of narrow minds. So as a person who appreciated politics, Hemingway had a difficult time growing up in an area that wasn't as progressive as perhaps his thoughts were. You'll see a number of different themes as you look at this week's selections. You'll see the politics, and if you have a chance to read To Have and Have Not, you'll notice that he is somewhat of a political loner in that book. You'll see the theme of a successful writer losing his talent. That theme is apparent in The Snows of Kilimanjaro. You'll see the theme of men and women and the gender strain that occurs in some of his writing, especially in Hills Like White Elephants. And you will see finally this theme of the psychological human personality and its engagement with the outer world. similar to what we talked about when we discussed Stephen Crane and the power of nature, and also what you're going to see when we get into Robert Frost and his poetry. The objective, detached point of view is very similar to what we read with The Revolt of Mother and Freeman, and there was that third person omniscient narrator who is recording the situation as if he or she were a fly on the wall. And finally, the fact that Hemingway had a perception that he sold to America, that he tries to sell in his stories as well, of being a soldier, a fighter, a hunter, a literary genius. And some of his early short stories, you'll see a character, Nick Adams, and they're often those stories are somewhat autobiographical, as well as The Snows of Kilimanjaro is supposed to be. And there's a stress in those, and this is an example of one of the Nick Adams stories is Indian Camp, which is one of your selections for this week. But there's a stress of upon the ritual of doing things in a prescribed way and relying on a pattern to provide and shape the coherence against the surrounding emptiness and terror. So you'll need to pay attention to that as you're reading, especially reading Indian Camp. So I hope that you enjoy these selections. It's just scratching the surface with Hemingway, and I wanted to explain your next assessment. You're going to be creating a Voki, and it should be fun. I wanted to try a different way for you to respond to the stories, and so I've given you an example of one that I put together. And what you're going to do is click on the link to set the Voki up and have your character set in on a background. So the character in the background should have something to do with the story about which you're writing, talking. And then in the Voki's dialogue, you need to discuss 2 literary terms that are associated with that story. So if you have any questions about that, you can always email me or call me. And I want you to start thinking too about next week's assessment, which is going to involve working with some of your classmates in a group situation. So I'll explain more about that probably early next week, so check back with me then. And also I look forward to reading your papers. I haven't begun that yet, but I know that I'm going to enjoy them, and we'll get that feedback to you as quickly as possible. Thank you. Have a great day and a good weekend.